Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and once again, it's a Thursday. I'm joined by JP Mason, and it's a positive show. It's Halloween, JP, which is probably why you've got The Exorcist behind you there. Well, I'm no doubt sure we'll dip back into the old horror themes as we go through the next hour, but none of that horror is at the doorstep of Celtic Park, that's for sure. How did you enjoy last night?
I enjoyed. It's always great to watch Celtic under the floodlights, and whilst it was a little bit of a frustrating first half, disjointed, you did have the feeling that we had the the right backups on the bench to come on and make a difference, like they did in the Falkirk game, for example, when it was a bit stuffy. I mean, even just going back to Sunday's game against Motherwell, I mean, we brought off the bench Adam Ida and Arne Engels at the same time, which is like £20 million worth of talent. And folk will be like, "Oh, it's because you've just got all the money and blah blah blah," and like, it's like, well, yeah, because we're a well-run club, and we've done that on the basis of player trading, good scouting, and being successful in the park, and having a really massive support who sell out games. Whether it's, I mean, guy next to me turned around to me last night and said, "This is a really good crowd tonight, isn't it?" I think he was surprised at the turnout for a league game on a Wednesday night. You obviously hope that it was going to be busy, but I don't know what the actual attendance was. You never really get the proper stat, because it's obviously season ticket holders, and maybe they just count that as attendance or not. I don't know if they do. Do you know if they do? Or?
Well, there's a two-tier thing, right? So they, as a business, obviously will claim the ticket sales as the attendance, but for the purposes of safety, they have to have an official attendance that goes to the authorities and it goes to the league and all the rest of it. Because I remember the Ronnie Dyler season, there were many games that were kind of between the 30 and 40,000 mark. JP, the second season, many games. So you see empty seats, but they're paid for. Therefore, obviously, it's classed as a sale kind of thing. But when, it looked like a tremendous crowd. As you say, though, it's a different vibe, right? And I think the different vibe this time round is twofold. Firstly, we do have somebody else in the mix through merit. And secondly, it's not because the team sitting third in the league at the moment have just been promoted for the Championship, or they're just acclimatising to Premiership football. We're 12 years down the line from the formation of Rangers Football Club. And this season, I think, is going to be pivotal in where we go over the next 5-10 years, JP. Not just Celtic, but Scottish football as a whole. And I think that, going into it, it's not just the game. It's not just the result last night. Rangers going up to Pittodrie and being beat 2-1. I think it's much bigger than that, because the knock-on effect could be that Aberdeen continue this momentum and they go on a brilliant run. The weekend, I think, is a part of the journey, because, I think Celtic win that game, we win the treble. I just think that we're going to be unstoppable if we win at the weekend. If Aberdeen get a result, and I hate to think, even contemplate that, if they get a result, what does that do? That will breathe life into their confidence and the belief in the fan base, and maybe even into the ambition of the boardroom. And if Aberdeen look at the situation that they're in just now and think to themselves, if we finish second this season, we will be playing, maybe not group football, but we'll be playing Champions League football next season. Now, I know it's hard to get out the qualifiers, right? You might have to play 8 games, 10 games.
I was speaking to my mate about this morning. I'm not sure that's absolutely nailed on. Is it definitely the case that second place this season goes into Champions League qualifiers? That's a fact.
As far as I know, let us know in the comments. Someone in the comments might want to disagree with that. Show us that we've had the coefficient has resulted in us losing the Champions League spot. I mean, I know obviously that in terms of guaranteed Champions League football, the winners don't go right into the groups. So you're going to have qualifiers next season. Yeah. But if Aberdeen were to show that kind of ambition, JP, and by the way, there's going to be fans of Aberdeen thinking that they're challenging Celtic. Fair play. Let them think that. Let them believe that, But I think it's a different vibe, JP, the fact that you are keeping an eye on that other score last night. You know, I can't deny it. There was people in the comments saying, why are you talking about another game of football? Because, you know what? Love Street 86. This is what you do as a football fan. You're keeping an eye on other results. It's neck and neck. We've got superior goal difference, but it's neck and neck at the top. And we're 9 points now clear the third place Rangers. And you were telling me before we came in, you're listening to the Aberdeen game last night as you're coming out the stadium to try and get the full-time score. So it does. It adds a different layer of excitement for me, JP.
Well, yeah, I mean, just thinking about the Aberdeen, the atmosphere last night at Pittodrie, I think it was, I can't remember. I listened to some stuff last night when I got in, and whoever it was talking about it, whether it was Joe Lewis or some other, it was Chris Sutton, I think, actually. He said, I've been here as a player and a pundit many times, and I've not heard it like this tonight. You know, sold out, properly rocking. And I think back to that game that Rangers stole the 3 points in the dying minutes. Do you remember they came back? They were 2-1 down, and in sort of injury time, I'm pretty sure it was Scott Arfield that scored the winner.
Yeah,
and you think it, having to experience that as an Aberdeen fan who obviously has no great love for them. So last night to them, well, I know the text I got from James, who's a friend of mine, is a massive Aberdeen fan. It was just like in capital letters, Y, and then about a million A's, and then about a million S's. Just so that was his reaction to it. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely great for us that there's somebody keeping us on our toes, because when it was 0-0 with us and it was 1-0 to Aberdeen, and obviously everybody cheers that, but then you're like, well, we still need to take care of business here. And we've had nights at Celtic Park like last night where you just can't find that goal. You just can't, as much as you knock on the door, you can't find the goal, and it could have finished a stalemate, given the disruption to the team. But Brendan Rodgers, blessed, gets away with it. Probably knew he got away with it as well, because if the second half had been like the first half, then it probably would have finished a draw. But now we've got the strength and depth to bring players on, like a Canadian international who gets named in the team of the tournament for was it the Copa America?
Copa America, JP. Yeah.
So that's a guy we're bringing off the bench now. I really like Anthony Ralston. I appreciate everything he's done for the club, but last night he looked like a player that had been watching football rather than playing it, because he just didn't seem to have awareness. And
how many times did he overlap?
And his angles, his passes, and everything were really, really wayward. And I said to my mate this morning, I was like, if you put Ralston to say you've got 1 to 10 as the first choice Celtic team, and then Anthony Ralston's your 11th player, it's probably not going to matter as much because of the balance of the team and everything else. But when you put Anthony Ralston into an already disjointed sort of Celtic side, if you like, in terms of, well, Yang on one wing, Palma on the other, it just didn't feel like we were at the races, really. And then you had Ralston into that as well. So I kind of felt for him in a sense, because he wasn't playing with that settled Celtic team that you could just slot him in and out. It was kind of, there was a lot of onus on him, and people will be like, well, he gets paid enough money, then the onus should be on him. But he did cover himself in glory, and I don't think, despite Yang's assist, which he got a bit of luck from the nick that took it through to Johnston, despite that assist, he got a good ovation when he went off, but I didn't really see a lot from him or Palma. I mean, I said to the guy that's next to me, I was like, there's no way Lewis Palma's going in at half-time and able to look at himself in the mirror, as he probably did.
He probably winked in the mirror, you know?
Yeah, but there's no way he's looked at himself in the mirror and thought, I'm confident I've had a good game. I've had a good 45 minutes, because he hadn't. His decision-making was terrible. His concentration was terrible.
Yep.
Yes, he can ping in an unbelievable outside of the football into the box, but which ultimately went to nobody. he takes a shot on when there's probably better options. I find it astonishing that he's a guy that plays international football and we bought for £3.5 million. You know,
see the big thing,
I
JP.
think he's capable of more. You know that he is.
Yeah. Not in this team. This is the thing, right? And last night, after the game, there was a bit of to-ing and fro-ing between myself and a few of the commenters who think that I'm giving Yang and Palma a hard time. And it's not that I need a whipping boy. Looking at that performance last night, and I watched the game differently when I'm covering it on Acsom, JP. I'm the sad guy that has to take notes so that at the end of the game, if I'm going to make a point, I can justify it, right? And with regards to Yang and Palma, what I seen from Yang was a winger who had no courage. There was no bravery. He didn't want to take on his man. He turned back more often than not, played it safe. Many times played the ball right back to Ralston or CCV rather than turning and facing and even, gathering the ball and getting the ball in behind the pocket, behind the defender. He never once did that, right? Obviously, he sets up the goal. But the thing is, that was the first time he beat his man, hit the line and got the ball across. That was the first time that he did it all night. And that was, 59 minutes in. So it's taken him an hour to do the one thing he's on the park to do. And that's be creative and create chances for meant to be Kyogo. And it didn't happen. So there was 3 moments in the Palma game that stuck out for me. 2 of them were superb crossfield passes. Ironically enough, to Yang. They were brilliant. They were absolutely pinpoint passes, JP. And you're looking at him going, he has got technical ability. And then there was the shot where he has cut inside and he's bent one round and it was a decent save by the goalie. Other than that, nothing. There was an occasion where we break, and if the winger's got pace, we can really get them on the back foot, and he doesn't, and it just seems so laboured. And before you know it, Dundee have got the shape back, JP, and all the tempo and the energy of that move is just sucked right out of it because we're not fast enough. So it's not about trying to find a target in the Celtic team to deliberately be negative and say, I'm going to target this guy. I'm delighted we won the game. Yang and Palmer were weak points of the team. And just to prove that it isn't anything personal, Ralston was the exact same. And he's my favourite player in this squad. He was exactly the same. You take him off and you bring on Johnston, and the entire landscape of our play changed. The tempo, the energy, the aggression, because Johnston plays with a real aggression to his game. He was overlapping. He plays the ball to Yang and then takes it back to score the first goal. So I fear that there's a drop down in some of the areas whereby your backup is not anywhere near the kind of standard of your first choice. Some people might think that has to be the case because it's difficult to keep people happy and all that. I'm not so sure, JP. I think we can improve on the wings. I really do. And the other position that I'm a wee bit concerned about that we'll talk about is up top. Because if you've got one injury and your centre forward isn't getting a knack of scoring the goals, as Kyogo looked as though he was having a frustrating night last night, you have no real option. I know Brendan's saying Maeda is your third choice. That's fine, but if Maeda plays through the middle, you're having to play Yang on the left, so that becomes an issue for me. So I don't think it's wrong to have a view on a player that isn't, a shining accolade and saying that they're a star man. Yang and Palma were poor last night.
But the thing is, for everyone that has a go at you or has takes exception to you saying anything against Palma or Yang, there'll be a person that will agree with you because that's how.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it goes and how it works. Because most of the people around about me last night were like, the drop off from Maeda and Kun to Yang and Palma is like a cliff edge. It's massive. So it's frustrating because it just feels like Yang and Palma are poster boys for a previous recruitment strategy and a previous recruitment policy, because the two of them have come in at a time when things weren't really as plain sailing as they should have been. I mean, you've got a guy like Navrotsky again missing from the squad and doesn't get anywhere near it last night.
Yeah.
Lagerbielke's away on loan. And then you've got like Quan, Hibbs on loan as well. It's just all these guys have come in and not nailed down a place in the team or the squad. They're not even like proper squad players. I mean, Brendan Rodgers played those players last night because he was, thinking like a snooker. I always go back to the snooker references, but he's thinking of the next shot, and the next shot's a hugely intense game at Hampden, an evening kickoff on Saturday, followed not far by another hugely intense game against a team that's sitting, I think, second in the Bundesliga.
Yeah.
So these challenges are greater than last night. No disrespect to Dundee. So like you said, he's got to use the squad because, as I said to you last Thursday, I can't imagine the mental the drain that would have put on your psyche, the concentration of that Atalanta game, and what you have to put yourself through. It was just absolutely relentless from minute 1 to minute 94. You just have to stay switched on. And, well, going by Aberdeen's results, we'll have to be completely switched on for them on Saturday as well. And I don't think there'll be a Kev Graham 4-0 prediction, put it that way.
Kev is in the comments, so let us know what your prediction is this week.
I think he'll agree now that we've got to take Aberdeen seriously after they beat Rangers. I mean, I know people might say, "Oh, well, it's not really a big deal beating them," but it is to Aberdeen, and that momentum that they'll take from that result last night is huge.
Absolutely, because they've been written off. People are doubting, and I'm not even talking about a title challenge. People are doubting the challenge for second place, JP, and to see them actually put their money where their mouth is, as it were, last night and get that result in a meaningful fixture at Pittodrie, I just think brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But it obviously gives them a spring in their step for this weekend. I've seen enough in the league game where we draw 2-2 with Aberdeen. I've seen enough to think that we've got we turn up at Hampden, JP, and we can win that game. We're a better side. We do have more depth. We do have, for me, a wee bit more aggression when guys like CCV and Alistair Johnston are back in the side. A wee bit of concern around the midfield that we'll talk about because, if Callum McGregor's outside of the midfield, I think that we absolutely do lack that leadership that he brings to it, and that's understandable. Give us some of your comments in the comment section. We are talking about whether or not Brendan Rodgers made too many changes last night, or if that's what we need to do because we're like a snooker player looking 1 or 2 shots ahead. What's your thoughts on the wings? Am I being harsh on Palma and gang? Let us know your thoughts on that. And a midfield without Callum McGregor, what's your best 3 if McGregor doesn't make it at the weekend? Loads of great comments coming through. Stephen Donnelly says, I know we are all in a good mood with regards the Rangers 2012, but from our point, I was not impressed with Palma, Yang or Ralston. He agrees with you, JP. None of them anywhere near what is required. And you need to have, I think, more of a situation where, okay, Greg Taylor drops out and you've got Baye, for example, or Liam Scales drops out and you've got Trusty. So you've got players there that can step up. I mean, the midfield is strong. One drops out and you can bring in, for example, Hatate was on the bench last night. So I think we're strong in some areas. Kyogo drops out, you've got Ida. But on the wings, I don't think we've got that luxury. I don't think right back will be a priority come January, for example. But on the wings, I think we really need to look at it. This time last year, it was Mikey Johnston who was playing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it did seem a wee bit like one of those games from last season. You could have put that first half into the October-November spell last season when everyone was, freaking out a bit about whether or not we'd done the right thing in appointing Brendan Rodgers, and the recruitment was being questioned massively because none of those 9 players were really impacting in the way that I bet the club hoped and thought that they would. The thing about Ralston is at least we've seen like performances and performances from Anthony Ralston that you remember, and he's made contribution and he's played well in games. Yes, he's not Cafu, but he's played well for Celtic in the past. He's completely earned that deal that he got. So I'm not just willing to write off Anthony Ralston because he didn't have a very good game last night. I've not really seen it from Palma or Yang where they have actually put a number, an 8 or a 9 out of 10 in a game for Celtic. Can anybody genuinely say that they remember Yang having an 8 or a 9 out of 10, or Lewis Palmer having an 8 or a 9 out of 10.
I think
in a game for Celtic.
There was a patch of form that Palmer had last season where people were looking at his figures and goals and assists and looking at them and saying that it's a really good return. But that was a year ago, JP. That was a long time ago. And this is the thing someone also mentioned last night. You've got to give them a chance. Well, we're 18
months in.
Can't
say the Sligo Rovers game, that doesn't count.
He did take the ball for scoring a hat-trick, though. We're a year and a half down the line now into both their Celtic careers. And I think you're right. You can look back historically and say, well, Ralston's had an entire season under Ange where he was so reliable, that you think to yourself, he adapted to a particular position that Ange wanted him to play, inverted fullback, and he done so well. Since then, he's been something of a bit part player, but he's still chipped in. This season, Palma and Yang haven't. I think there was early parts of last season where Palma in particular did, but this season they've not done it, and we're at that bit where if you get a start on a Wednesday night in October against Dundee, you need to step up. They're the guys that need to be creative, JP, when things aren't working, when you've got 9, 10, 11 Dundee players behind the ball. They've got to find a way. They've got to craft an opportunity. They've got to pick that lock. And we know that's what we're coming up against time and time again in Scottish football, because it's a lot of the teams, it's the only way they can get a result. I don't blame them for it. We need to find a way. You notice when Johnson came on the park, how many times Dundee were facing their own goal? They were not facing their own goal at any point during that first half. It was only when Johnson came on that he played a really high line. He made Yang then have to play higher because Yang's thinking, why is my right back ahead of me? And that movement between Johnson and Yang back to Johnson was the reason we opened the scoring. So it just takes one or two people to take the game by the scruff of the neck, and I think Johnson did that last night. I think he's improved immensely, by the way, JP. I mean, he's always been a player that I've rated, but he seems like a completely different beast, almost as if he's no messing. It's like, I'm going to take responsibility if we're not playing well, and I'm going to get us over the line.
I thought that on Sunday when he was given the captain's armband. I said to my mates that I was at the game with, I was like, I would love to have heard his huddle speech just for the pure cheese of it all, probably just the amount of cliches he'd been thrown out. And I think he made reference to that he was, he thought if I'm only going to be captain once, then I need to work on my speech and everything else. So it'd be interesting to hear what he said, and even just in the dressing room at half time or whatever. But it does seem like someone that brings a kind of steeliness to the side, and he doesn't look like he's going to be like that. But you think about some of the tackles he's put in his time, especially against Rangers as well. He's taken tackles as well. He can take a tackle as well as dish it out. And I don't know, I just think it's a pretty good piece of recruitment from whoever it was, whoever has got their signature next to that contract, counter signing it with Alistair Johnston. They can be proud of themselves, because it's plucking a guy like that out of the MLS, and nobody had really heard of him. I mean, we signed him just before the World Cup started, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it was pretty much known that he was going to be a Celtic player before he'd kicked the ball in that World Cup. So again, great recruitment on the part of Celtic or whoever it was to get someone like that signed before they go and have an impressive tournament, because obviously potentially that's out of our reach after the tournament's finished, because there's bigger and better clubs in for him. And I genuinely just hope we can hold on to him, because I mean, he might have his sights set higher. In fact, he probably will have his sights set higher than Celtic. I hope not, but I mean, he's going to be an ambitious guy. I don't know what age he is now. Is he 25?
I'm just going to check that actually, JP, because I would say he's in that bracket. You remember when we signed him and we had Juranovic at the time, and there was all that chat around whether or not it was an upgrade. He's actually 26. He's just turned 26 this month,
Right.
Alistair Johnson. But there was all that chat on here and elsewhere about whether or not, because you bring a player in, is he an upgrade? And for a spell we ran with 3 right backs, it was Ralston, Juranovic and Johnson. Now that you're looking at him, I don't think there's an argument. I think he has been an upgrade on Juranovic. What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, Juranovic, obviously, from something I heard from a pretty good source, sounds terrible, doesn't it? But it is. I'm not going to say who it was because folk will be like, "Oh, check him dropping names and that." But
Never reveal your source. Never reveal your source.
no, I heard that he would have been keen to come back to Celtic if there'd been an opportunity, and he wasn't like rushing to leave in the first place. But Celtic obviously saw an opportunity to make money on a player who was heading towards 30 at a rate of knots. And when you think about it now, how many seasons has it been since Juranovic left? He will be 30 now. I mean, or maybe 31, I don't know. But I think as much as I really loved Juranovic and he was dynamite going up and down that wing, and the whole Fireball song was amazing as well. I guess that was a case of Celtic being smart in the transfer market. You only need to look at figures presented by another club in the last 48 hours to see when you should and shouldn't sell players, and who does it and who does it well.
No, this is a big thing, JP, and I think having assets is great. The Juranovic one was that we had the replacement in the door. That was the important thing. But at the time, and even at the beginning of this season, if he had asked me if he was an upgrade, I think there was a debate to be had. There's no longer a debate. He absolutely is an upgrade. Juranovic is now 29. The lofty heights of 29, not yet hit the big 3-0. By the way, Danielle...
What to be 29 again?
Seems like a while back. Danielle, a regular poster on the comment section, is in to say that she's had the worst week of her life. Our beautiful wee mum lost her battle with lung cancer. Watched Acsom every day in hospital last week to help me through the days. So thank you again. No, thank you for tuning in. I hope, obviously, you and your family can be together and help each other through this, Danielle, because it's a tough one to take. So thoughts and prayers with every single one of you. It's always a pleasure to see you popping up on the comment section. We asked about Kevin Graham and how confident he is. I've not seen his response to that yet. Functional performance, says Kevin. Rested players, got the 3 points. It's a good job done. We learned nothing. Did we or did we not? I mean, the thing with that is we've spoken about the performance of Yang and Palmer. We probably already knew that. We spoke about the performance of Alistair Johnson. We probably already knew that as well. I think what I was looking to try and learn is how another part of the game last night was how CCV and Trusty would play together, particularly with Trusty playing on his right side. I didn't look upon it last night, JP, as Liam Scales being dropped. He's done nothing to be dropped, but it was an opportunity to learn something from that partnership. Did you think it was anything learned, or did we not really get the opportunity? I know Dundee had a couple of chances early doors to see them as a partnership.
I would disagree saying we didn't learn it. I think we learned that we have a squad that can negotiate games like that, which are potential banana skins. And I know people will be like, well, the amount of money you've spent, you should be dealing with Dundee on a Wednesday night. But the rapid nature of these games that are coming now, quick fire, Wednesday, Saturday, Champions League, Tuesday, for example, that I think, as Ben Rodgers alluded to last night, that the mental drain on these players maybe is starting to hit home to some people who will accept that is a thing that happens to players. Yeah. And I certainly think that we learned that, okay, we didn't have a great first half, but we've got what it takes to keep a clean sheet for a start. Schmeichel played well. It was a great save early on. I've not seen it back. I've not seen it back. It was in line with me, and it looked like he was at full stretch from a kind of snapshot in the middle of the box. Only a few minutes in.
Very good save.
So we've got the grit and determination to keep the back door closed, whilst maybe not being fluid up front, but then we have a squad that we can use to affect games in the last half an hour. And this 5-sub thing it almost seems unfair for a club like Celtic to have the 5 subs to be able to bring on the level of quality that we have. If we leave quality out, then we can bring that on and just put teams to bed late on. if it's needed. So but regards to Carter Vickers and Trusty, with the greatest respect to Dundee, I don't think they really had a great deal up front that tested them. The test for Carter Vickers and Trusty as a partnership would likely come if they were to be used together on Saturday, say.
Yeah.
Which maybe was his idea. Maybe he was thinking, I'll play Trusty and Carter Vickers tonight ahead of Saturday and then bring Scales back in for the Champions League. Because, like you said, it would be harsh to drop Scales. And would Scales be considered dropped if he didn't play on Saturday, with a view to playing in arguably a bigger game?
This is the thing. We automatically view it as being dropped, but if that is the thinking behind the starting 11 at the weekend and then during the week, you're not dropped. It's just that, you're better suited to that game in the Champions League. But we always look at it like that. I think back, I think Scales has had a brilliant season, by the way. I'm not having a go at him. But I think back to last season's semi-final against Aberdeen, where they targeted him and Taylor at the back post, and they targeted him and they got good results out of doing that. Is that fresh in his mind? I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the thinking. We didn't bring Trusty in for 6 million to sit on the bench. That's the big thing. CCV's been injured and Scales has stepped up and he's been brilliant as our main performer at the back. The other question I think around about the defence, JP, is in the left back position. So we were talking at the beginning of the week about this incredible story that's broken about Bernabe, that he's the star man and scoring goals and all that kind of stuff over in Serie A in Brazil. And there's this talk of £8 million, and there was a suggestion that not only we're getting our money back, we're also getting the Rafael Scheidt money back as well for Bernabe, right, from the Brazilians.
For any younger listeners, that is the real name of a football player that played for Celtic 24 years ago.
Well named indeed. Listen, he's away. He's going to go, and I think if a player goes away and performs well, like Mikey Johnston-esque, or earlier on Jack Hendry, where the temporary loan move turns permanent, great. You wish them all the best to move on. So that leaves us with the two left backs. Greg Taylor, who comes back in last night, who's obviously grown his hair out. He's looking a wee bit more continental with the long hair. And Baye, who I think's come into a real game. I think he's looking consistent. He's brilliant going forward. 4 assists already for Celtic. And I just think, I looked at that last night. I thought, right, that's Taylor back to match fitness, which is why he started. He needed those minutes. But who did he start against Aberdeen? Because I thought Baye was coming into a really rich vein of form as well, JP.
Yeah, and I didn't read the article, but I saw there was an article someone had penned about, and the headline was Spanish, I don't know if it was Spanish journal, somebody in Spain has credited Celtic with the way that they've helped Baye settle in Glasgow, whether it's off the park or on the park. So obviously word has fed back to either Barcelona or whoever in Spain that is close to him, and he's obviously told them that he has been looked after and everything else, which I don't want to talk about the COVID season too much, but it just goes back to how well were players that arrived here from other countries, how well were they looked after, or how well could they be looked after at that point when you're bringing in 4 or 5 players, as we did at the start of that season, in a time where things were normal, whereas we're in, well, I say reasonably normal times. I wouldn't say what's going on in some parts of the world are normal, especially not if you're at Madison Square Garden the other night. I don't know if you've seen any of that, but the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden.
I avoided it, yeah.
My God, absolutely. But just so sad. So sad that there is support for all of that. I mean, it was just blatant racism on display. The way that people, I mean, the comment about Puerto Rico was just absurd. And just some of the other stuff as well, the supposed stand-up comedian. Anyway, digressing, but I wouldn't say we're living in a normal world, but normal is as far as you can get to normal in terms of versus COVID. So Baye has said that he really likes Glasgow, and I think that will have an impact on how he plays on the park. I'm sure it will. How could it not? How could it not? If you're happy in your life off that pitch, and you're staying in a nice place, you're being introduced to sound folk, you're getting told the restaurants to go to. If he's single, I'm pretty sure he's not going to be not happy with what goes on in nightclubs and bars and things like that. You know, he'll be getting attention in that respect. So, yeah, I mean, Glasgow is a great place to live. I mean, it gets a bad rap sometimes for the weather and things like that, but it is a good place to live. And I think, yeah, that's reflected in his performances on the park for Celtic, because he comes in as a youth product from Barcelona, which on paper looks great. Doesn't always work like that. You know, it doesn't.
Who was the guy that came in and ended up playing for Cowdenbeath? Joanjo. Was it Joanjo? Played with Hearts for a while.
Oh, yeah. Was he a Barcelona youth product?
I'm sure he was. I'm just going to have a look at that. Didn't he end up at Cowdenbeath? Mind you, they had some kind of link in with Cowden through Craig Levine, didn't they? Joanjo.
I think it would be interesting to see. It's definitely a good dilemma to have. I would imagine Greg Taylor will play on Saturday. I think it would be quite a move if he wasn't to play. But I guess it depends how he's reacted to playing the game last night and how his fitness is and his injury or whatever injury that kept him out. So that'll come down to that. But there's a lot of question marks over who plays on Saturday. I couldn't pick the team, and nobody would have picked that team last night. That's for sure.
No, absolutely not. We'll get on to the leak because we were given the team early doors. JP and John Hughes spoke about that on Wednesday. I thought that Joanjo had turned out for Cowden, the Blue Brazil, having played for Barcelona in 1996. He didn't, unfortunately, for the sake of this conversation, but he did play for Hamilton Accies and Inverness Caley Thistle. So, you know, he saw all the hot spots of Scottish football life. But
just back to Baye, did you see the clip of the youth game that was doing the rounds on Twitter? It was again, I'm not sure who the Barcelona youth were playing, but I mean, they've obviously beaten this team, and the team are the first images you see are of this team dejected, like wee boys just dejected, and on the verge of tears or whatever. And a few seconds in, somebody on Twitter has noticed that it's Baye that goes over to console this young boy, and they look about 11, 12 or whatever, and he puts his hand to his head and just sort of like says something like, "Oh, it's all right, man," you know, and then like gives him a, you know, like that's pretty nice to see that sort of level of humility at that age, you know. So he's obviously been brought up well. So hopefully his time at Celtic, however long he's here, is a continuation of those sort of standards and morals, you know.
100%. Great upbringing. Absolutely great upbringing coming through the academy there. And this is the thing as well, JP. You mentioned about a player coming to a strange city. I say strange. I'm not saying Glasgow's strange, but you know, they're an alien within. It can be, yeah. I'll wait till you come to Dunfermline on a Tuesday night. But the point that you made, I think, is a really good one. And the COVID season has been well documented. It's been very difficult for people like Barkas and Ayeti to come to Glasgow, even Shane Duffy. But you look at some of the other examples, like Stan Petrov speaks about it, doesn't he, in his book, You Can Call Me Stan. And we spoke to him a few months ago when he joined us live on stage, Stilian Petrov, in relation to the fact that he couldn't speak the language and he wasn't really assisted. This was the bizarre thing, because you just think, well, it's Celtic. Of course, you know, if we're bringing a young player from Bulgaria, we're going to look after him. There'll be a liaison officer, all that stuff. It was not in place. And that then led to him going and working on the burger van and all that stuff, remember, to try and pick up the lingo. It's all about the state of mind. It really is. And if the player's happy, then they can express themselves when they go and get a game of football at the weekend or during the week. The other player I would mention who's spoken about this at length is Gary Neville. Love him or loathe him, I know that he divides opinion. But he speaks about going into games, JP, where the life off the pitch isn't right, and how it affects you on the pitch. And he's spoken quite a bit about that. And I find it quite interesting because as fans, we just, you know, players become commodities and assets and all this. And you just think, no, there's a human being there and they need to be up here. State of mind has to be spot on so that when they go onto the park, they can then perform. And that's so important to consider that way a player like Baye or any of these young guys that we bring in from all over the world. Listen, it's a good opportunity actually to speak about Odin Home in that respect, right? So there's a young guy who's come over, and we're talking about him like, get rid of him, loan him out, whatever. He's not in a team group. He's not a Champions League squad. What's that doing to that kid? He's away from home. He's in Glasgow. He might be feeling isolated. He's training all week and not getting a game of football. Must be really difficult for him.
He's not got the balance. He's not got the balance of actually getting to do what he's here to do.
Yeah.
Also,
because that's the payoff, isn't it? Moving away from family and all. The payoff's to get the game and get the success and have that feel-good factor, a winning with your teammates. He's not getting any of that.
Yeah, it's not worked out so far for him, and obviously we know that happens. We've seen a lot of players arrive at Celtic and it's just not worked out. Has it happened that often with players that young? I don't know. Like, you'll maybe be able to tell me better, or maybe I'm thinking wrongly, but I just don't recall us signing players at that age, and then them getting as little game time as he's had. You know, I mean, he's at this moment in time, he's so far away. I mean, he was nowhere near the team last night, was he? And that's got a bit of a damning indictment on his development. And I think Brendan Rodgers, as he said, saw something in him, which is why he, was looking to persevere with him. But it would be a remarkable turnaround if we see a run of games for Odin Home at any point with Celtic. Now, I think it would be, wouldn't it? It would be a kind of the greatest comeback since Lazarus if he was to, somehow make a short number his own and prove that there was a reason why we brought him here.
You asked about a player maybe around about the same age profile, and the one that I think about is Ibu Kouassi. He came to Celtic at 19, and I was being told that things hadn't improved markedly since the Petrov deal. When Kouassi came along, he felt isolated. He didn't really have many friends, and it's when you finish your training. I mean, people go on about a footballer's life being easy and all that, JP. There's obviously loads of perks to the job, but it's no easy. So when they finish the training, it's like, what do they do? If you don't have a group of mates, you don't have a partner, you don't have your family there, what do you do at night time? And I think that's a difficult one for Kouassi, and I'm hoping that in terms of home, and I'll probably check myself in the future if I'm talking about him in such a respect that it's almost disrespectful. He's a kid. He's a young guy, and I'm pretty sure now the club will be supporting him if he's going through any kind of difficulties in Glasgow. Now, Pete comes in to say Yang has ability. He needs to come on more when we are winning to get his confidence up. Did Brendan Rodgers lose a bit of faith in him after the Rangers game last season because he did not appear for a long time after that? That was when he came on as a sub, or 3-2 up, and he doesn't do the simple thing with regards to the defending. And we lose the
That's the game where we should have brought James Forrest on, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Obviously, Harry hindsight and all that, but yeah, I think so. I don't think the red card at Tynecastle did him any favours either, which apparently you can do that now and not get red carded, which is, I take it you saw that at the weekend, yeah?
Yeah, and it's the inconsistencies. We were talking about the fact that you try to be as balanced as possible, JP. So when Crawford Allen was replaced by Willie Collum, I was looking at the scenario and thinking, right, we've got an opportunity to change a culture, right? You've got somebody there who can change a culture behind the scenes. Didn't rate him as a ref. Still, looking back, thought he was rotten as a referee. But if he can change the elements within the game that we're unhappy with, and one of the biggest things is the transparency. So as fans, you're looking at that and you're going, I just don't understand how that can be a red and that isn't even a booking. That kind of thing just frustrates the life out of you as a football fan, JP. So
that was in such a crucial game for us.
Yeah.
So we'd already lost a goal to a penalty that was never a penalty in a million years. That if it was to happen again this weekend, there's absolutely no way a ref or VAR are given that as a penalty.
No way.
No chance. Not under the current guidelines, surely.
And we got hit twice like that. Remember Bernabe against Dundee United? The season before, where he's jumped up the arms behind him. He knows nothing about it.
Yeah.
And it seemed to rattle him. But you're right, and the one thing I was giving Willie Collum credit for was that transparency element, where he's actually coming out and speaking about decisions.
When does that get released, that video, the thing that they do? Is it a weekly thing they do?
I think it's monthly.
Is it monthly?
I think it's a monthly one, yeah.
Yeah, well, looking forward to seeing what they've got to say about the Adam Ida red card, which apparently, according to Stuart Kettlewell, wasn't a red card. And you're like, wow, I don't know what your your rules of red cards read as, but like a studs up challenge that bends a guy's ankle.
That was horrendous.
Aye.
That was horrendous, JP. And Brendan Rodgers has spoken out about the fact that he reckons Ida was lucky that the turf was quite wet. He goes, if it was a dry pitch, then his studs are sticking in it more, and it's just that, you're talking millimetres and you've snapped your ankle. Do you think, though, that, see, when somebody comes out, and we've seen it many, many times with people, even pundits, for example, the famous or infamous Kenny Miller one last season, where he just died on a hill and he wasn't going to change his mind. Do you think as a manager you come out...
He's still on that hill.
Yes, he's over there somewhere.
And
he's determined that he's right. As a manager, we get that there's emotion right after a game. We also understand you've got to a degree, you don't want to hang your player out to dry, right? You've got to protect your own players. But surely there's a wee moment in the last week where he's thinking, I've made a right, pig's ear of this. And then there's absolutely no way of him coming out and saying, I got that wrong. He must know he got it wrong, though, Kettlewell. His comments were ridiculous.
You're not going to... Is anybody really going to bring that up with him after he's either in his pre-match or his post-match last night? Probably not. Like, there's nobody going to be in the press being like, let's go back to Sunday and talk about that red card again. It's been talked about. It's been moved on. You would imagine maybe after watching it back, he's maybe sent Brendan Rodgers a text or phoned him up and went, actually, that was a red card. Hold my hands up. And, I don't think the guy did mean to cause any harm, but recklessness like that does cause harm. And we've shelled out £9.5 million on a player, which, by the way, there was some comments last week after we were speaking about Adam Ida from the Atalanta game, and one guy said he was turgid, and then that comment got liked by 5 or 6 people, and you're like, really? Like, genuinely, how could anybody in that game last week have been turgid? He did a job. It wasn't a headline grabbing job, but he contributed to that draw as much as everybody else did.
It was a thankless task for Adam Ida. It really was a thankless task, and he stuck to that task all night. I mean, see,
wasn't he up against Terry Hurlock, for God's sake? He was up against like pretty high quality centre halves.
100%. I agree with that. And at half-time against Atalanta, there was a comment came through saying Scales was a farmer. I'm now at the point, JP, where I probably, in the early days of social media, reacted to every comment that I disagreed with. And I don't mean reacted as in chucking the toys at the pram, but I would try and reason. And I'm beyond that sometimes now, because I'm just like, that's just so fat. Like last night, when people are saying Yang and Palmer are good, you've got something against them. And you've got a list of half a dozen things in the first half that each player has done wrong. You're like, well, it's all there. And this is pen and paper. The club's going to have, proper data analysis that will show Brendan Rodgers, these guys aren't performing. They're not doing what you want. They're not playing a high enough line. They're not taking on their man. The amount of passes or the amount of times Yang looks up and instead of beating his man, getting the ball in, he just runs and he kind of like slaloms to the left and he keeps running. But the Dundee players are all moving and eventually just releases the ball. So he's not made any progress. He's not brave enough.
Well, I'm sorry, but look at the difference between Yang and Kuhn. I mean, that's absolute night and day. I mean, Kuhn comes on in a game, scores 2 goals and sets up 2 goals. I know it was against Falkirk, but I mean, Yang could only dream of having a game like that.
He's scored or assisted this season. Nicholas Kuhn scored or assisted every 60 minutes in a Celtic jersey. That is astonishing. I mean, that's like
£3.5 million.
£3.5 million.
How much did we pay for Yang?
I'm going to say 2.5. and he's not made that. He's not made that impact.
So currently, on paper, Nicholas Kuhn is only £1 million better than Yang. I think we can all say that. It's the, if we were to put Nicholas Kuhn up for sale tomorrow and put Yang up for sale, it would be a sizable difference of figures that we would get for both players.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't want to be a hypocrite, because again, he's a young player. He's coming over. He's no longer got that support of Kwon or Owen. Absolutely. But in terms of his performances, if we're focusing just on his performances, it's something I think we need to improve on. There's a few more before we get into the Ibrox meltdown, probably for the last 5 minutes, JP. It is Halloween. Have you carved your pumpkin yet, mate? That's the big question.
Nah, I've not. I've been attending to other matters this morning, pre-podcast, that were a bit more pressing. No, I may do that. I don't know. I don't. I do love Halloween though. I've always been a fan. There's a very, very early picture of me dressed as Freddy Krueger from
Primary
7. I was dressed as Freddy Krueger at a Primary 7 Halloween disco.
Are you following this up? Are you going to follow this podcast up with a wee picture on the socials just to indulge us?
I wouldn't mind doing that.
Me and my mates
had a special makeup that was like, it was like kind of, I don't know, it was called like burnt face or whatever, and it was proper latex. Like you had to mix it together.
Oh right, so it could peel and all that stuff.
So I got my mum to put it on, and she wouldn't put it close to my eyes. She was like, "Oh no, you can't." And I was like, "I don't want big like patches in my eyes." Freddy Krueger didn't have like normal skin around his eyelids, so I eventually
attention to detail, mate. Attention to detail.
It's slightly embarrassing that the picture that's taken of me was before I got her to actually fill it in with red. So I have got the patches, but I've got the glove. And I was wearing her black rain jacket because I didn't have the red and dark green striped jumper. And I think I had my Gran's rain hat on, like a black rain hat.
Oh, brilliant, man.
Makeshift.
It's for the bairns, it's for the kids. I was going to say, yes, the most memorable guising attire was me and my mates went as the Beastie Boys, and we even wrote our own rap. So we were chatting the doors and rapping. I mean, the things you do for some sweeties, real sweeties. Candy, obviously. Kieran Allen comes in to say, "Life's a toenail, just can't cut it, lads. Hail, hail." The meltdown has been glorious. Listen, we're football fans and we're talking about Celtic. And, if you don't get stuck into the biggest rivals, JP, you're not living. I'm loving the meltdown. I think the meltdown is glorious. And I don't think it's going to stop. I think they're on a downward trajectory. They're in a spiral. I've seen all the usual this morning. The fans are gushing at the fact that Steven Gerrard might be available and all that. They can't afford to sack the manager, bring in a big name who will want a budget. They just can't afford to do it.
Bring him back, honestly, just so that the myth can be completely and utterly blown apart to pieces. Well, the Michael Beale myth about being the mastermind behind 55. They still love going on. Did I not say to you about 2 years ago, I hope in about 4 years' time, they're still going on about 55, and that's all they've got to go on about.
Yeah.
Shock horror, here we are. That's what they're still going on about. Cost them about £128 million, right enough. But sure, I hope it was worth it in these current dark days that they're experiencing, because as far as I'm concerned, this is absolute revenge for the 1990s. Revenge for that huddle at Celtic Park.
Mm-hmm.
They rushed together as they were being told to get off the park. Revenge for Gaza playing flute. Revenge for beating us at Celtic Park 3-0 with Neil McCann scoring.
Revenge for all the side letters and the EBTs and unpaid tax as well,
You always keep the receipts, and I've got many stored up top, and I've got zero sympathy for them. They're obviously having probably the worst wake-up call of their lives, accepting the fact that their club has been run so badly, like from top to bottom. They've got no positions of authority in the club. As much as people have a go at Peter Lawwell, I would far rather have Peter Lawwell, counting the pennies at Celtic and making sure we're a well-run club. I don't agree with him meddling in football matters. I never have. That was something that when it was pointed out to me that was the case that was happening. again by a fairly decent source. I wasn't happy about that, but the financial side of things you cannot at all have an issue with when you compare it to what's going on there. And the thing is, the financial results that they've posted for this season, they've got no way of making them better for next season.
No.
So, like, it's only going to be worse next season unless they cut their cloth accordingly.
The big thing, JP, firstly, it was Terry Cassidy that brought Peter Lawwell to Celtic first time round. Big shout out to Terry if you're tuning in. But if you've laid out all the facilities, you've pumped money into a youth facility that's producing players. If you have a recruitment team that's finely tuned and it's producing nuggets from all over the world, and there's a few seasons where you know that you're going to spend a lot of money. There's a big outlay, but there's a payoff. Then you can look at that and almost justify it. But there's no payoff because they've just been chucking money down a black hole. They have got no structure whatsoever. They have not got that recruitment aspect right. They don't have the youth development right. And by the way, we criticise our own club for certain things that have and haven't been done in that respect, JP. But all the while, ensuring that the bottom line is sound, ensuring that there's success at the football club, which we have done, other than a few blips here and there. So in terms of the meltdown, I share your enthusiasm to absolutely indulge yourself in it, JP, because it's not as if...
They lorded it over us.
Like, JP, I'm going to bring up one thing, right? And it wasn't Rangers that organised it, but it was a Rangers-loving media that sent a hearse up to Celtic Park so that they could get a headline on the back of the Daily Record, RIP Celtic. And there's still some numpties out there that think that's proof that Celtic actually went into administration / liquidation, which never ever happened. Unbelievable, the mental gymnastics that they go through to try and...
Pretty heavy lifting, isn't it?
Oh, it's some pretty heavy lifting indeed. And everybody knows what happened back then. Celtic were monumentally badly run financially. They got the shock of their life trying to drag the club into the modern day with modern stadium and all that kind of stuff. Didn't work. But thankfully, we got over that. And we got over that with being prudent when it came to financials. And it's a generational thing, JP. We have, since Fergus McCann took over, I think we had to bring in Peter Lawwell when we did in 2003 because we were, financially not being run properly at that stage. We were hemorrhaging cash. Lawwell comes in, and since then, on a financial level, we have been sound. We've been run as a really soundly run business. When Rangers were formed in 2012, there was an opportunity at that point to have a long-term plan, but they didn't accept that, long-term meant that they might not get into the Premiership within 4 or 5 seasons. They wanted to be in there at the first kick of the ball. They wanted to be in there. So they just chucked money and money and money, and that culture has continued. 126 million pound lost.
Not their million, not their money though.
Not money earned.
What money bought Ryan Kent for £7 million?
I know.
2 or 3 years after.
How did they pay Gerrard's wages?
2 or 3 years after coming back from the dead in the lower divisions, they're buying a guy for £7 million. Like, that's insane. That is absolutely insane. And then they let him go for nothing. I mean, that's entirely on them. If you're paying £7 million for a player in his early 20s, you should be selling him within 2 or 3 seasons and getting a profit, looking to double your money. And they know, they don't need me to tell them that that's what they've not done. They don't need me to tell them that they should have struck while the iron was hot with Alfredo Morelos. And we know what's currently happening with him. He's not exactly setting the world on fire in any league anywhere. I think he's got bigger fish to fry than football, given the reports of late. So they could have potentially got money for Morelos at some point, but no, 55 was the end game for them, and it's absolutely come home to roost now, and that's what all this turmoil is for. And it's also the delusion that every time they get a manager, he's the one, and this is Clement's league now, and because he won the League Cup last season, and you're just like, what are you basing this on? Like, and
it's gibberish. The managers believe the hype, the fans believe the hype, and the big thing as well,
the people mentality that is ingrained into them that will take generations to not be ingrained into them. Like, I don't think that we should win the league because we are Celtic and we are superior to everybody else, or we're a superior people or anything like that. Like, I've never ever thought that. I just want my team to win football matches. I don't think that I am better than a Rangers fan or a Protestant or anything like that. I just think that thinking is a bad way to live your life.
Absolutely is, JP. And interestingly enough, on Friday night, not a shameless plug, we do speak to Mick Lynch, and we're talking about class, the class system in this country. And when you think that for some strange reason, in an elitist way, you're better than anybody else, when we're all working class, largely speaking, we're all from the same class of group of people within this establishment, which is the UK, then you're kidding yourself on if you think that somehow you're going to get on in life because you think you're better than any other religion or class of people. And it does come into it. And I think that when you're looking at a generational thing where Celtic have been run well for a generation and we've had a generation of success, you go down the road 5 years, JP, you go down the road 10 years, if this continues and there is no sign that it won't, then you have a football club that's just an ordinary Joe football club in Scotland. And that, for me, creates an opportunity for someone else, be that Aberdeen or one of the capital clubs, to say, you know what, we could run our football club properly. We could get the recruitment right, we could get the manager right, and we could get youth development right, and we could actually compete. And we could compete a lot better than we have done. So fair play to Aberdeen, because at the moment, they're the team that stepped up. And hopefully they can continue that through to the end of the season.
Totally. But the other thing as well is that they keep talking about, oh, we need a Fergus McCann-like character. You can tell me exactly what Fergus McCann put into Celtic and took out of Celtic when he walked away with a brand new stadium with 60,000 seats and a healthier bank balance than the one that he inherited. I mean, what did Fergus McCann put into Celtic?
5 million, and it was every penny he had. That was every penny that he had. And you'll remember when he stuck to his plan. He stuck to his plan almost to the day, and he sold his shares. He was criticised for that because he made a profit from the 5 million that he had invested. Which, looking back now, is utterly bizarre, JP, because you look at the club that is really the legacy of what McCann did, is the club that we're watching today.
Said it before, I was absolutely livid when he was booed on the park when we lifted the league flag. My first league game as a season ticket holder, having endured 9 in a row by them, and then the guy that's responsible for it is getting booed coming onto the pitch. And you're like, what is going on here? Like, how could... Like, it's the same people last week that were mumping and moaning in the comments about a 0-0 draw with Atalanta. Yeah, it was good, but... Like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? The moon on a stick? Like, that is, like, absolutely manna from heaven getting a result like that. No one gave us a hope in hell. Everyone was like, Celtic -3 and 4 and 5. Like, no one thought we were going to get a result last week. And we get a result, and then there's people still moan about it. And we win the league, stop them winning 10 in a row. And then the guy responsible for it, who seemed like a genuinely good guy, if a bit eccentric, especially if you listen to Andrew H. Smith's tales about him. I mean, quite mental, actually, how stingy he was with his money and all the rest of it. We spoke about that before, but yeah, they think that there's like some billionaire sugar daddy that's just going to come along and be like, oh, that looks like a good project, I'll put loads of money into that. But we all know that the financial regulations wouldn't allow that to happen anyway. It's not as if he's just going to come along and be like, right, I'll get a 10 million left back, a 10 million right back, a 15 million midfielder and a 25 million pound striker. That's not going to happen.
No.
And the sooner they realise that that's not going to happen, the better for their own mental health, I think, because judging by some of the things I saw last night, they're not in a good way.
No. And when we first done our first episode, Kevin Graham and I, on a Celtic State of Mind, it was 2017. And we were already talking at that point, JP, about 10 in a row, right? We were already talking about it. But actually, in my own mind, I was thinking about it in 2012. I was thinking to myself, right, nobody's going to stop Celtic now. right? Nobody. At this moment in time, and this isn't me being the same entitled person that we've just spoken about that I loathe, there's nothing stopping Celtic, unless there is an opportunity to move elsewhere out of Scottish football. There is nothing stopping Celtic from winning 10 in a row. We could well be on that road to 10.
Aberdeen would beg to differ, but I'd far rather that there's a team pushing us, because if there is someone pushing us, then it pushes the board to strengthen in January. It pushes the board to potentially go, right, Palma, not happening, sell him, buy somebody better. And that's the board. That's the ominous thing. If we do that and we end up with a squad that is basically untouchable, and that there isn't any reason for us to gripe on a Thursday morning after a Wednesday night game against Dundee, because the new equivalent of Palma and Yang have come in and assisted 2 and scored 1
and ran riot. No, you're right. You take Yang Palma, right, and say they're no good enough, and we bring in somebody better in January, somebody who has made that kind of Jota or Kuhn impact. You do the same with Norowski and Welsh, and go and bring in another defender. And then you're looking at that bench thinking, wow, that is just moving. And it's just wee things like that. So Nawrocki and Welsh combined cost 4.3. Yang and Palma combined cost, what we're talking, 5 million quid outlay. So go and buy someone who Brendan Rodgers maybe has either identified or has rubber stamped. And then you are a much...
Paul Tisdale, who we'd like to think knows what he's doing. So we've actually got someone in charge that can right the wrongs of the past transfer windows.
Yeah. An interesting thing to leave you with, JP.
You what?
Just an interesting one for you to ponder, right? Friday night, you couldn't come along to the Gordon Strachan night with John Hartson, and obviously other commitments, but he said something really interesting. It was pulled up by a member of the audience. It was a very good question about this report that he was brought in to. He was done a bit of consultancy work with Celtic. It was to look at the football department, create a report, and it was going to be fed back to us as fans. It will be like 2 Januaries ago, so almost, in January, like 2 years ago. And he was asked about it. It was, a good question, because things are going well, so you don't tend to labour the point. And he spoke about. He didn't give specifics, but he spoke about a lot of the recommendations he made are now being implemented in the football department. So I was looking at some of the things that have happened, some of the big changes that have happened maybe in the last couple of years. Pathway manager has been created, a role's been created for Darren O'Day, not for Darren O'Day, but he's fulfilling it. Barrafield investment in terms of the facilities, Paul Tisdale and the restructuring of the football department. And I'm starting to wonder how much of that, he would probably not tell you because of the non-disclosure or whatever, how much of that was down to this report. And we have made these changes, JP. We are putting these things in place behind the scenes to make us stronger.
Well, you've sat with Gordon Strachan more than once, and from probably speaking to him in person, how much he has a feeling for Celtic, having not previously had a feeling for Celtic until he'd served time as a manager there and become close to Tommy Burns and all the rest of it. So it would be wild if he put together anything other than something that was going to benefit Celtic. He's going to look at the whole picture and basically go, right, tweak that, introduce that here, do this here, because he's obviously seen it at other clubs. He's been an international manager as well. And he's managed in the Premier League. He's got contacts. It takes a few phone calls to well-placed sources to be like, well, what is it you do there? All right, cool, we'll do that, because I already know from speaking to somebody regarding an English Premier League club how far ahead of us they are in terms of medical, sports science, things like that. So all that has probably still to come for Celtic as well. But I mean, we know that we've been antiquated, if that's the right word. I hope it is, because we're live and I can't delete it. But we know that we've been archaic, maybe is a better word, for a long time with regards to certain aspects of the way that the football club is run. And hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see Celtic being dragged into the modern age and that can only benefit us at home and abroad as well when playing in Europe. And we just want to see year-on-year progression in the likes of the Champions League. And we've got 4 points out of 3 games so far. And here's hoping we can put points in the table on Tuesday, whether it's a draw or a win. Obviously, I'd love to win. But would a draw be a disaster on Tuesday? I think
it'd be a very good score. I think it would be a very good outcome. I'm going to ask you one final question before we go, JP, because I know that you'll be busy tonight as well. It is Halloween. Favourite horror movie before we move on?
I think, do you class The Shining as a horror film?
I do, because that's my answer. I absolutely do, yes.
I'd say The Shining. I remember my friend Joseph Monaghan, wonder what team he supports, he'll be watching as well. He taped The Shining off the TV, off Channel 4, sometime in the late 80s, early 90s. And I remember him giving me the tape, and I was scared to watch it in the dark. I mean, I was 11 or something like that, right? And I watched it around at my next door neighbour's house after school. So basically around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Still absolutely terrified me. I just think it's absolutely one of the creepiest films ever made. Kubrick was a genius. It developed filming styles that were then used as the norm in terms of the camera that was on the runner. So basically to follow the wee boy around on the buggy or the cart or whatever it was, and the sound as well in The Shining. I've seen it once in the cinema, and you really appreciate how good the sound is. Like, see when he's going along the carpet and then he hits the wood, and then back to the carpet, back to the wood, and that in the cinema is amazing. And obviously the pretty violent parts at the end with the accent at the door as well in the cinema. It's so loud. Like, he's turned that volume up so high. And then as well, just how brilliant Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson are in it. Jack Nicholson's unbelievable in it. Like, to see someone just quite clearly losing their mind as the film develops, it's quite something. So yeah, The Shining, I would say.
And the climax, absolutely brilliant. I remember watching that and just rooting for the kid in the maze, and then him outsmarting his old man. I loved it. I love it. It's Halloween. Go and watch it if you've not seen it, ladies and gents. I'm pretty sure everybody tuning in has seen this movie. If you haven't, go and watch it, and then follow up with a documentary that have got a theory around the true meaning of The Shining.
Yeah.
Room 237. Go and watch it. Listen, Celtic have been taking care of business as the mother of all Ibrox meltdowns kicks off. I don't listen to the phone-ins. I'm pretty sure there'll be a few Celtic fans listening to them this evening. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks everybody for getting involved. If you want to come and see us live, we've got a big Christmas night. We're going back to the 80s with Roy Aitken, Peter Grant and Pat Bonner.
Well, lineup, by the way.
There might be more. There may be more guests to be announced.
Wow.
Ticket link underneath the video. Thanks everybody, and once again, JP Mason, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.